Hey guys, this video is part of a two-part Deathwing guide video. So what's going to happen with this is you will be able to see part one here on my channel where we're going to be going over a competitive Deathwing build, and I'm going to explain some of the reasons why I consider this a competitive Deathwing build. Then you can head over to HeroesHearth to see one of my favorite builds. It is a way more damage, much higher damage build, but it is very risky. So if you want to be jumping into combat and absolutely blowing people up, the link is going to be in the description to check out the Incinerate build and a little bit of a playstyle of the Incinerate build. As far as this video though, if you're coming over from HeroesHearth, if you like this style of guides, then make sure to subscribe, check it out. So in this particular video, we will be following Mindhawk. He is one of the coaches that hangs out in my Discord. He also has a Twitch stream that I will be linking down below. He usually only streams during PTR, but he is going to be going over, well, I'm going to be going over one of his builds and explaining the reasons that he picks up the talents. We talked a little bit about these talents earlier, so I want to kind of share a little bit about Deathwing, this build, and why this build is considered the more competitive version of the build. And the reason I say competitive, and when I show a build that does way more damage and then I have another build that's more competitive, the reasoning is usually that the build that is competitive has more utility. And that usually is what it comes down to. If you're in quick match or you're in unranked or even like the lower Storm League ranks, I think the Incinerate build's probably still gonna be better to carry with because you can jump into fights, do a ridiculous amount of damage, and just win the fight. So that is really why that one's going to be good. But here we're going to break down this other build. So you take the same talent, Incinerate, and you all are also going to be going a Destroyer build. You're going to stay in Destroyer form for the majority of the time. For Destroyer, honestly, is just the best way to make sure you don't get kited during a team fight. After the game's out for a bit, I'll play around with some World Breaker builds so we can see if there's any builds we can run in World Breaker. But for the most part, both myself and Mindhawk have found the most competitive builds to be Destroyer form. That's subject to change. PTR is not always the best place to be when it comes to testing out builds because there's such a wide rank difference and level difference and skill difference and all that. But that being said, we both found that Destroyer is really a powerful version. He sent over this game and he said that he liked this game because it was a very close game. So this is actually the first time I've seen this, but I've seen his build several times already. So I know why he takes the talents he takes. And he's been playing Deathwing pretty much all day. So he's got a really good grasp on this. So the first talent that he takes, Dragon Soul, allows him to heal. Allows him to heal off of his W while he's in this form, heal off everyone that's around him. Then in the level 4 area, he picks Dragon's Ire. While you have 3 or fewer armor plates, your damage is increased by 30%. So 3 or fewer armor plates just means that you are under 75% health. Because you'll be at 4, you break your first armor plates at 75% health, and then you will be at that 30% increased damage, which you sit at that 30% increased damage for the majority of fights. And that's what he believes is a little bit more consistent and a little bit more competitive, because you're going to pretty much permanently have 30% increased damage during any point that you're playing with Dragon's Ire. Now remember, this also combines really well with Dragon's Soul, because you're going to be healing for 75% of the damage dealt to heroes, and you're going to be doing 30% more damage, allowing you to heal more in fights and keep up with that. Now, in this case, he does head up here. He clears this lane, and he waits for his cooldown to be back for Global. He heads back down to see if he can stall, but honestly, it's going to be a little too late to stall. So he's going to use Dragonflight so he can join his team, and this is what Global should be doing. Global should be looking at applying pressure in the off lane, the furthest lane from the objective, and then using your Global to threaten the enemies. He jumps down onto the Cho'Gall and goes for a charge on a Greymane and then W. Now, he is going against a Greymane. Cursed Bullet is really the biggest counter to Deathwing, so we'll see how he plays that out. But it looks like, overall, it looks like he's going to handle this out pretty well. And it's a good chunk of damage right there. Q would take too long for him to get there, and I think he realizes that a lot of things would take too long for him to get there. He could have charged and then done a W, but because of the delay, I think Cho'Gall would have gotten the objective no matter what. Now, Skyfall is the talent that I think is pretty much one of the best talents for the level 7 tier. As much as Death Drop is really, really strong for the Incinerate build that you'll see in my Heroes Hearth video, Skyfall has its own perk. And the big thing about Skyfall is it makes your global more reliable. And again, you're going to hear in competitive builds, you're going to hear the words reliable, consistency, reliable and consistent anyways, very, very often. And the reason for this is because the reliability of builds in competitive is the whole reason that you would play them in competitive. If you play a Feast or Famine build in competitive and the enemies just kill you a couple times, you just lose the game by default. You want builds that work well when you're ahead or behind, and Skyfall gives you that. Because what Skyfall does is it allows your global to be much faster. It allows your global to be like ETC or like Dahaka, where you can jump up in the air, drop down 3 of these charges, gain 15% of your health, and immediately be able to drop down. And so you have a much, much more reliable, consistent global compared to what you would if you didn't actually have that. In this case, we see that there is an objective spawning. He picks up Dragonflight, and watch how he's going to use these meteors. 1, 2, takes out the Gul'dan with the meteors. That also lowers the cooldown, so he can drop down whenever he wants to. So he's checking mid lane, he's checking bot lane, and he's just seeing if there's any place that he wants to drop before he actually goes to the objective. He takes Burn Beneath My Shadow as well. Even on maps like this where it's not common that you're going to be taking forts, he takes it for the extra damage over time, and because Bellowing Roar has such a long delay, and it's so difficult to pull off in so many situations, which is why he just doesn't really like Bellowing Roar. I personally... honestly, I'm kind of with him, to be brutally honest. I've played around with it a little bit. It's very slow. It's very hard to get value off of. He fought a little too long under turret, and stuff like that does happen. Ultimately, they took 2 people under turret to try to zone out Cho'Gall, who then just hit a fountain and rejoined the team fight. I think they ultimately should have just stayed on the team fight while they had the level 10's advantage over the enemies. But I'm not really coaching the game here. We're just breaking down this guide. He does use his global one more time. Remember, every time he uses his global, he's going to have Skyfall. He can use the Skyfall once to interrupt. He can use it twice to interrupt. He can use it 3 times to interrupt. And then he can drop down. So here's another interrupt from the Skyfall. And one more time, this Deathwing's realizing what's going on. He's like, okay. What the Deathwing should be doing is the Deathwing should be immediately activating it again after he's interrupted. Because now, on this last one, he's going to use his Q to drop down, and then he's going to interrupt both of them. Oh, wait, it has a cooldown. Oh, you can get them back. I didn't even know that. That's even better. So he was able to interrupt for quite a while. Ultimately, I think the best thing that Deathwing should have done there, the enemy Deathwing, was just channel, and then right as he's interrupted, immediately channel again. Interrupted, immediately channel again. And I think he would have been able to get it on the 4th one. But either way. So not only does Skyfall get you a more reliable and consistent global, but you can also use it for stalling objectives that require channeling, making it not just a really cool talent that just helps in general. Whoa, that did a lot of damage to that Gul'dan. Oh, he might have traded, actually. And that takes out a Gul'dan. So I really like that that Skyfall. I think that's super cool. He's going to be really good on channeled objectives, and he's going to be really good on timed objectives. Things like Infernal Shrine, Sky Temple, he's going to be great because you don't really need healing if the objective ends in 15 seconds, right? And then the same idea for channeled objectives. If you can stall for a long time when you're losing an objective, it gives your team more opportunities to win an objective. So really, really cool. And I think this is definitely showing what maps Deathwing is going to be the best on. So again, guys, as we're going further in this video, this is a partnership with HeroesHearth, and if you haven't seen the Incinerate build, head over to HeroesHearth. I'll put a link in the description unless this video comes out first. But yeah, make sure to check that one out as well. That is the Incinerate build. It is the highest damage Deathwing build that I've been able to find during playtesting. You do a ridiculous amount of damage, and I topped damage every single time that I played that build. And it's just really, really strong. This build, however, I just think is consistent and has so much utility. We've got a nice ult right here. Look at that damage. That upgraded ult damage is so high. He ends up picking Fire and Fury. Now, he talked to me about this a little bit, and he said that he's really not sure about level 13 yet, and he's still playtesting to see which talent he wants to go with level 13. He says that Fire and Fury has a hard time getting a lot of value off of it. Now, Incinerate build, I found I didn't have that much difficulty with getting value off of Fire and Fury, but it is something that he says that he really struggles with. So it could be some ping issue, or it could simply just be that we played against different types of players, and he uses his ult to get over walls a lot. I always think that's funny. But I guess if it's resetting cooldown often, that's one thing. But yeah, overall, I mean, he says that he's trying out different ones. He says that he's not sure about Ruination because he doesn't go in Worldbreaker very often, but the bigger slow is really nice. And the Wicked Inferno is, again, kind of neat for wave clear, but outside of that, it's not really that useful in the way that we play Deathwing. So he's just kind of watching to see where things go. He likes to use Skyfall a lot while he's up in the air to see if he can't snipe someone down. And in this case, I don't think he's going to jump. He is jumping down. And he goes for this enemy Deathwing back here. And we saw that protected on there. And that's my notification, not yours. I apologize for that. Should have turned off Facebook. Hold on, I'm actually going to turn off Facebook really quick because the person that's messaging me usually sends me like 14 messages. Love the guy, but he gets carried away sometimes. That being said, ooh, this is a tough place to be in. He already used his escapes, so now there's his last escape. Okay. So at this level, if you feel like Fire and Fury is not getting you a lot of value in your rank, I would recommend Ruination. 60% slow is huge. A 60% slow feels like a root in some situations. So I'd recommend trying that talent out at level 13 if you just want a little bit more consistency. Outside of that, level 16 is a tier that he usually picks Elementium Plating. I usually pick Elementium Plating. It's just a really, really powerful talent. And both of us have kind of explained that with some coordination, Gaze Unto Destruction would be very good, but just not really sure about it yet. And I mean, these fights are getting a little crazy at this point. The objective's down in bot lane. His Dragonflight is about back up. He's gonna get auto attacked by minions. That does not interrupt it. And it looks like apparently Cursed Bullet doesn't interrupt it either. So that is kind of interesting. So he's using his again, just quickly using his Skyfall to do some damage to the enemies. After someone died on my team, I don't know if I would I wouldn't know if I would probably hold back some of those to see if I just want to stall until our team's back up. I guess with some coordination, that would be the best call, but without coordination, I think he did the best thing by just jumping down when he jumped down. But they may end up getting punished for it. Not really his fault, but I think if they had communication, he definitely would have played it better by just waiting, interrupting for a little bit, and then when everyone was alive, he would have gone for it. So they end up losing that objective. He goes back into the Skyfall. Sorry, he just walks back to lane. It visually looked like Skyfall for a second. And up at top lane, he is going to see if he can't just clear the lane. Molten Flame is really your best bet for clearing a lane. I like to turn off Molten Flame well before the minions are dying, so I can use Incinerate and just auto attack to save on energy. But some people, him in particular, he likes to just use Molten Flame all the way through and then just gain his energy back while he's flying. That's definitely an option. So you see, before he lands, he likes to throw the 3 Skyfalls, land down, jump with the team, and his Cataclysm will be up in 3 seconds if he wants to just immediately ult. Looks like he's not going to. He's just going to do his best to dodge those. He's going to pop Cataclysm, but he might die during it. Oh, man, he's getting so low. Incinerate's going to heal him for a little bit. Elementium Plating, does he still have it? I can't see if he has it or not. Oh, no, it was on cooldown already. But, yeah, it is. It's pretty brutal. Level 20, we've been kind of debating whether or not what we want to take. Stood in Fire is really interesting. It's a really big slow. It's really powerful. But Arrival of a God is also extremely good because you can keep the cooldown of your global really, really short. And you can get that the Skyfall procs over and over and over and over. So it's really, really good. It's going to lower your cooldown when you are out of it, when you're in it, and also the cooldown of your abilities when you initially drop down. So it's just a really great talent that does a lot of things at once. Student Fire, though, is very good. Destroyer's Rampage, I go this in the Incinerate build, but most likely he won't be going this talent because, again, it lacks consistency. If you can't get value over Incinerate already, then you're not going to be, like, if you're not taking all the Incinerate talents, you really shouldn't be taking Destroyer's Rampage, because the whole thing's about just getting your cooldown of your Incinerate super low and keep that cooldown running forever. But I think Arrival of God's going to be the most consistent talent on this tier. So we'll see what Mindhawk decides to pick up. In this case, he's just blowing through the enemies right now. As far as damage goes, again, he's not doing quite as much as the Incinerate build, but it's just very, very consistent. He zoned out an entire area. You can see the Greymane does end up walking through it, but he takes a huge portion of his health to do so. Charging in first and then incinerating second, just doing what he can to try to get his healing and zoning as much as he can. The enemy Deathwing's also zoning quite a bit. He pops the Elementium plating just to see if he can bait the enemy, and then he does gain that extra health from it. Greymane's Cursed Bullet won't do much at this level, and nice! He jumps back in, gets a nice bursty hit of damage right there at the end. And they take him out. Back to Dragonflight to gain some of his life back. Remember, he can increase his life regen by using Skyfall on heroes, but he is just going to use his Skyfall to speed up the boss, and then he's going to stay in this form to gain the rest of his life. He's going to quickly look around the map to see if there's a place where he can get value, and it looks like he thinks bot's going to be the best bet. Ultimately, I would agree. And there we go. So a pretty good amount of soak that he just picked up down bot lane, got his team level 20, and he decided to pick Destroyer's Rampage. So maybe he's just going a hybrid version of the build that I've been messing around with. I did tell him to play around with some builds. We'll see how that plays out. So his siege damage is rather low on Deathwing. Ooh, that's interesting. Okay, so he's going to use his Cataclysm to see if he... Yeah, I actually use Cata a lot just to escape. I find, especially if you're picking up the Bellowing Roar... Wow. So, yeah, this Z is not interrupted by damage. I thought it was. But I guess it's not. You can just use it whenever you want to... That's really weird, though, because that seems like the easiest out.
Because at first, for a while, he was actually just unstoppable and was a split-pushing monster, and he would fly away and you couldn't stop him, and it was pretty nasty.
Instead of, like, trying to... If you're in a weird situation, you should pretty much just always pop that. Interesting. So right here, he's going to jump right down. He's going to go for this Gul'dan. His ult's going to be up soon. He could actually just ult if he wanted to. He needs to get out of the fire and then heal off of the W. Look at the cooldown, though. That's... Oh, man, that's rough. His cooldown of his Incinerate was super low. These two talents synergize really, really well. And that is the 6 damage to finish off the game. So I'm going to go into try mode, and I want to show you guys the builds that we've been messing around with to try to play more competitively and more consistently. So the first thing, let's hit level 20. And so he ends up picking Dragon Soul in a lot of situations, Dragon's Ire, so he gets that extra damage, Skyfall, so we get that interrupting ability, and just the faster global when you need to join your team. Burn Beneath for just because it's generally more consistent than Bellowing Roar. And then at this level, I would recommend, if you want a more consistent build, try out Ruination, but we may see that Fire and Fury combined with Destroyer's Rampage is the go-to later, even if you don't go all the other talents. Level 16, Elementium Plating gives you that survivability and the ability to get your plates back after getting healed a little bit. And level 20, I believe the most consistent is going to be Arrival of a God. You'll already have some pretty large slows with Ruination, and you may not need the bigger slows from Stood in Fire, but I do think it'll really depend. Maybe it's going to look like Earthquake, where if the enemies don't have a lot of mobility, you go Stood in Fire, and if the enemies do have a lot of mobility, you're going to go Arrival of God. But Arrival of God, the whole purpose of it is to do this, where you Z. Right as you go up with Z, you're going to fire down all of your meteors, dropping the cooldown. Then you're going to jump down, dropping more meteors, lowering your cooldowns, all of your cooldowns, and then you'll have your Dragonflight back up relatively soon. So that's essentially the idea of this build. So your global will be up very often, it'll be very effective, and you can use it for a variety of things. But I do think this build is one that you can really change around talents based off what the enemies have. And we were messing around with some other ones, but it seems like Dragon Soul seems to be the go. But yeah, this generally seems to be it. The only talents that might shift is if I mean, you don't really need to go full W build, but if you want to, it is an option if you just want some more damage. But let's talk about how this build plays out as far as why I like, I mean, the 60% slow, I'll just give you kind of an idea of what it looks like, because it is a pretty beefy slow. Come on, walk around. Look at that slow. It's such a good slow. So that's why I think I like that level 13 talent, is if you do want to actually like take people out, you can, because the problem with Deathwing is like he does a lot of damage, but catching up to people like when you want to take him out is very difficult. Even in the build that I was running that did a bunch of damage, people just walked away so often. So this will actually let you really do a lot of value. And you can be really scary. So you still get the healing from your W, which is really nice. You also get that bonus damage if you start getting low. And then when the enemies are ready to run away, we can just slow and get on them. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. So that is the more consistent version of the build if you want to do that. So once again, guys, this is a partnership with HeroesHearth. If you want to see the high damage, super hyper carry build that just hops around and just drops on people doing a bunch of damage, check out the video that is on HeroesHearth's YouTube channel. And then outside of that, if you guys are coming over here from HeroesHearth, check out this version, the more consistent competitive version with some cool little tricks here and there. If you like this style, feel free to subscribe. Hit that bell, be notified whenever I bring out new content, and thank you for stopping by. Really appreciate it, guys. It's been a lot of fun doing a partnership with HeroesHearth. I've done a couple other things with them. They are a great organization. If you're just on our channel or on my channel and you aren't planning on going over there, feel free to check out HeroesHearth's website. They've got a whole lot of guides on every single hero, even ones that I don't do guides for. So I would recommend checking them out. They also do articles for a variety of different things. Thank you guys so much for watching, and feel free to check out any of my other videos or any of HeroesHearth's other videos.